Great to have you with us. Virginia votes for a governor tomorrow, and the nation is watching. That is the pulse of America tonight. This is where we are as a country, an off-year election, a governor's race of all things, garnering national attention. Why? Well, because as we've said on this broadcast before, politics is the new national sport. In the true spirit of that, let's check the scoreboard, shall we? In the latest average of polls, the statistical analysis website 538 has Republican Glenn Youngkin ahead of Terry McAuliffe by a percentage point. Is it a microcosm of what's happening in the country? Is it a referendum on President Biden's agenda? And here's the backdrop. 71% of Americans in a new NBC poll say the country is headed in the wrong direction. 48% of Democrats say that. Certainly not good for President Biden, especially after Senator Joe Manchin today threw a grenade into his $2 trillion spending plan. According to the Washington Post, education is now the #1 issue for Virginia voters in this election, fueled by a number of high-profile school board controversies. In September, education favored Democrat McAuliffe by 33 points, a massive edge. That's our Leland Vittert with McAuliffe today. You'll hear more of that in just a second. But now those numbers tilt, according to education now, toward Youngkin by 9 points. NewsNation caught up with him as well. Some believe the tide turned after McAuliffe made this comment.
I'm not going to let parents come into schools and actually take books out and make their own decision.
You vetoed it.
So, yeah, I stopped the bill that I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
So another wild card in Virginia, independent voters. In that poll we just mentioned, an overwhelming majority, 70%, again, of independents also think the country's headed in the wrong direction. What role could they play in this election? After all, it'll be a big shift in the electorate for Youngkin to pull this out. Last November, Joe Biden beat Donald Trump by 10 points in Virginia, which has become increasingly blue. So a lot of questions as the nation watches over the next 24 hours. And that's where we start tonight. We have NewsNation's Leland Vittert on the ground in Virginia. As we said, he spoke today with Terry McAuliffe. We'll catch up with him. And we also have Robby Soave with us. We're going to talk more about what this all means from a national perspective, especially as we head into the midterms next year. And also joining us, our friend Julia Manchester, the Politico reporter for our partners at The Hill. Julia, let's start with you on this. You're in Fairfax, Virginia, just outside D.C., which is, I guess, something of a McAuliffe firewall, if you will, the Washington suburbs. Will those suburbs be enough to carry him to a victory here? How critical are they outside of the areas that we're talking about that we know will be important, including Loudoun County?
Well, Joe, that's the question we're all asking here in Northern Virginia. Look, Northern Virginia has been a blue firewall, really, as you said, for Democrats in the past, as well as Terry McAuliffe. The problem is you are starting to see a number of polls, not only in Northern Virginia, but statewide, showing a much tighter race than I think a lot of us anticipated. Now, Terry McAuliffe is having his final campaign rally of the day here in Fairfax at 6:45. He's expected to denounce President Trump's tele-rally. That's supposed to be happening later this evening in honor of Glenn Youngkin at 8 p.m. However, Glenn Youngkin is also in Northern Virginia, in Loudoun County, really talking about, like you said before, that issue of education and parents' rights. That's something Republicans have really been using to galvanize their base and even peel off some independent voters. And I think that's a strategy that Republicans and Youngkin's campaign are really employing right now. They don't expect to win Northern Virginia full out, or even an area like Loudoun County. They understand there's just simply more Democratic voters there. However, if they can turn out the full power of the conservative Trump base in Western and Southern Virginia, they're hoping that in addition to that, they can also peel off some of those Democratic or moderate-leaning voters in Northern Virginia. That can be their path to victory.
Julia, I know you've spent a lot of time covering this particular campaign and this election. What are the issues that are moving the needle there?
Well, I think there's a number of issues that are moving the needles, but I think it depends which part of Virginia you're in. For Democrats, they would point to the issue of abortion and abortion's rights. I mean, it's interesting that you're hearing the opening arguments of that Texas a near total abortion ban at the Supreme Court today. You've seen Terry McAuliffe and his Democratic allies really zero in on it, saying that Glenn Youngkin would want to bring a similar ban to abortion if he wins and if the Republicans take over the House of Delegates. But like we've talked about before, before, Republicans really honing in on the issue of parents' rights and education, hoping to really use that to galvanize their own bases. But I think this is also an election that has to do with the economy and the cost of living. You've heard both candidates really address this with their respective policies, and we know that the economy is often a #1 issue for voters. So I would say those are the three big issues right now that we're focusing on.
All right, Julia Manchester live for us tonight in Fairfax. Thank you very much. We will certainly be in touch. As we mentioned, let's go now to NewsNation's Leland Vittert, host of On Balance. He's live in Richmond. And Leland, you caught up with Terry McAuliffe today. It was Advantage McAuliffe not too long ago. I guess the question is, what happened? Why is he struggling now?
You pointed out precisely in your monologue, Joe, it came down to that one moment where he said parents shouldn't be involved in their children's education at the debate. And as we've talked to voters throughout Virginia, we've asked what came first. Was it that education was the #1 issue and then Glenn Youngkin started talking about it? Or was the issue that Glenn Youngkin started about education and people really figured out that it was a huge issue? Chicken or egg, you can argue it either way, but that is the inflection point. And Glenn Youngkin figured out that the issues of education, critical race theory, and the impact that parents should have in their children's education is something people care about more than the economy, more than COVID, more than abortion, as we're seeing just about anything else. And the focus of that really is Loudoun County, which is outside of D.C. It's a place that President Biden won by double digits because suburban women just don't like Joe Biden, don't like Donald Trump very much. What they do like is having a say in their kids' education. And that's where the real shift in this race is.
Leland, how much of a referendum do you think this is on the Biden administration right now? And I guess the follow-up question would be, if this state goes red, how big a deal is that?
Take the first part first. Very much a referendum on Joe Biden. And all you need to think about is, if Donald Trump was still president, would Glenn Youngkin have a chance? And the answer is almost certainly no, because this is a state that really does not like Donald Trump. It's also a state that's not so crazy about Terry McAuliffe. So it becomes about this broader narrative of the Democratic Party. He was not all that popular of a governor. As for your second question, which is really probably where the political minds are looking, is if Youngkin wins, what does this mean? Glenn Youngkin will have won this race in a Biden plus 10 state without embracing Donald Trump. Glenn Youngkin will not say Donald Trump's name out loud. If he wins, there's a real possibility this proves the emperor of the Republican Party has no clothes.
Well, it's a great point, Leland. And I think, as we mentioned, he's run a very Youngkin effective campaign, sort of embracing these Trump supporters, but at the same time keeping him at bay as much as he needed. But, you know, there's I guess, a betting house now that seems to think Youngkin certainly not only has a chance, but could win this, although it might be close. Leland Vittert, I know you're going to have much more on this race tomorrow in Virginia coming up on your show, On Balance, at the top of the hour. We will see you then. Thank you. Bigger picture now. What does this race signal for U.S. politics more broadly, regardless of who wins this? You'll recall here from our beginning that 7 in 10 Americans say in a recent NBC poll the country's on the wrong track. Let's get you on the right track now with Reason senior editor Robby Soave. Robby, it's always good to see you. Thanks for the time. How much do you think this is a barometer for national politics?
Well, it's fairly significant because Youngkin has closed the gap by making, as your previous guests have explained, by making the main issue education and these kind of lightly social, cultural issues, racism, not in the abstract, but its application to the curriculum in schools, that kind of thing. I think it shows you that the sort of far left, activist, progressive contingent of the Democratic Party, their views on gender and race are very toxic, are not shared by a lot of the American public. And that represents a real opportunity for conservatives to win over some independents and also even some Democrats who might be hate Trump, down the line resistance type people, but resent the idea that school boards should have total control over what their kids are learning, even if they're teaching their kids some very controversial and divisive things.
Are we looking too deeply into this, Robby? I mean, it's really the only election to watch right now. Maybe that's why we're watching it so closely. let's do some hypotheticals here. Let's say McAuliffe wins. Biden won by 10. Say McAuliffe wins by 1. What if he wins by 6? Is there a difference in how much he wins or loses that we end up using as sort of the barometer on this?
Well, the interesting thing about Virginia is that it was a red state. It's a blue state now only because of the growth of the federal government. It's very unique, right? The federal government grows and there's more federal employees. And then there are more people who commute to D.C. I live in D.C. I get this phenomenon. More people who work in D.C. who are government employees who are Democrats, but they're living on the other side of the river in Virginia. They're living in Arlington, Alexandria, et cetera. So it would be a red place if not for the growth of the federal government.
Right.
So we always have to check that. It's a unique phenomenon.
Let's play a little clip from the president who talked about his poll numbers. Here's part of that, and we'll get your comment after.
The polls are going to go up and down and up and down. They were high early, then they got medium, then went back up, and now they're low. Well, look, this is look at every other president. The same thing has happened, but that's not why I ran. I didn't run to determine how well I'm going to do in the polls. I ran to make sure that I followed through on what I said I would do as president of the United States.
What do you think of that, Robby? Have you ever met a politician who's not interested in the polls?
No, they're all interested in the polls, and I'm sure Team Biden is worried about Biden's approval numbers. Look, if I'm in the Democratic camp, if I'm trying to advance Democrats, I'm thinking we need to make the economy rebound, do whatever we can. An improving economy speaks well to our issues. Pandemic's going to get better. We have, even if this race right now is tough for us, the rosy sort of picture is that things are going to get better, and that's going to put us in a stronger position. If I'm the Republicans, I'm thinking, how can we sideline Trump the person while still speaking to sort of Trumpish cultural, social issues that don't involve Trump himself, because he's a madman who says crazy things that are alienating to anyone who's not a partisan MAGA person. And that would be my strategy. And that strategy, I think, can be successful. Obviously, Youngkin is the test case. Youngkin could really demonstrate absolutely that it's successful. If he comes just short, maybe we say, I don't know, different approach is necessary.
Quickly, Youngkin has a chance. Clearly, even the betting houses think he has a chance. Who do you think wins tomorrow?
You know, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said McAuliffe's going to eke it out. And now I don't make predictions when I'm not confident. I'm really not confident. I think I might go with Youngkin if I had to, but it's such a toss-up.
You wouldn't bet the mortgage on it, though. All right, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Robby Soave, always good to see you. Thanks. Reason Magazine's senior editor. Good to see you, my friend. Flights from hell. American Airlines cancels thousands of flights over the weekend and says issues will remain through Thanksgiving. Is this really all because of a weather problem? We'll ask that. And firefighters and police officers in New York City now on leave over the vaccine mandate. How last year's heroes continue to be this year's unemployed. Don't forget, you can follow us on social media at the Donlon Report on Twitter. Back after this.
There will be a public health crisis in New York, and it's not going to be because of COVID. It's going to be because of heart attacks that don't get responded to, fires that don't get responded to as quickly as possible, and a crime spree, and we should all be concerned about that.
That was former COVID testing czar Dr. Brett Giroir on our broadcast Friday, warning of an impending public health crisis in New York City. As of tonight, thousands of New York City public workers, including police officers and firefighters, are off the job for refusing to comply with the city's COVID-19 vaccine mandate. As of today, about 84% of New York City cops are vaccinated, while firefighters and paramedics, that number remains at about 80%. So here's what a former NYPD detective told us Friday as well.
This probably could have been mitigated much better if there was better education and better presentation of what the vaccine meant and how, that the vaccine was safe. I think many officers believe that it's not safe, and they don't trust government, to put it, just to put it out there like that. They don't trust government. They've been lied to before.
Dr. Giroir went on to say he'd be willing to go and educate the officers about the vaccine.
I will educate the firefighters. I will have as many seminars as they want. I will bring my colleagues. We'll have open discussion and try to diffuse the situation.
Doctor went on to say he wishes they would put the mandate on hold for at least a couple of weeks while they try to get this figured out. Let's bring in now Tony Katz, host of the Tony Katz Show on radio, and also Mo Kelly, host of the Mo Kelly Show in Los Angeles. Mo, let's start with you. The mayor there, de Blasio, says his plan should be a model for the nation. We checked in. There are 9,000 workers on paid leave in New York right now, 2,300 firefighters, as far as our research shows. Does that sound like a model to you?
Well, I can't disagree. There's a problem with the educational process as far as letting people know, but that we cannot understate the unwillingness of people to accept facts and science. If you say that you don't trust the government, I don't know how you can educate people out of that. That's just an unwillingness to accept the fact that this is a vaccine which has been approved by the FDA for not only adults, but now children. So there's just an unwillingness to accept facts and science, which is separate from government.
Tony, is this worth it?
Well, first, I think we're dealing with a false premise here. This isn't about a question of accepting facts and science. Science shows you from Israeli studies that natural immunity is real. The question about the science is, what are the long-lasting effects of a vaccine? This is a legitimate question that people have question about, especially when it comes to children, considering children survive COVID. And the idea that children need a vaccine is seen by many as just a bit of nonsense, and government doing far too much. And nobody looks to Bill de Blasio as somebody who can really tell you how to live your life. You have people firebombing delis in the middle of the day. You have people urinating on the streets. You have Jews getting punched in the streets for being Jewish. Never mind people who are Asian being attacked in Bill de Blasio's New York. He's not really the moral center.
Well, let's get back, Mo, to at least this mandate, because the mayor did say today that 91% of the workforce there in New York City, 91% now vaccinated. At what point do we call this good?
Well, you have to call it good, but you can always do better than good.
Sure.
And let's not forget, some 61 members of the NYPD, I'm talking about police and personnel, have died of COVID. And if we lose sight of the fact that this is a public health issue as opposed to a political issue, we can go round and round about Bill de Blasio and how he may not be the moral center of New York. But at the end of the day, first responders have been dying in New York. And if 91% is a good start, then I think we should push to 98 and 99% and stop playing around with these false debates about whether the government should have a vaccine mandate.
Force is not a false debate. I have to object strenuously. It's not a false debate. And we already know from the UK studies that people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated carry the same viral load. We know from the University of Waterloo that masks don't stop COVID. If there's a 3-millimeter gap in a mask, the reduction or the issue goes down to 3% in terms of spread. That's all that you're stopping.
What are you
saying,
saying,
Tony? There is a science conversation here. What was that?
What are you saying then?
I am saying that I think that if you listen to doctors, vaccines work in reduction of symptoms. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Sure.
I am not anti-vax. I am anti-force. The government has taken the wrong approach. So Admiral Giroir can educate all he wishes, and I don't mind it. He's welcome to come to my beloved Indianapolis. But it's not about education. The government took the wrong tact. They engaged in force. They engaged in demeaning, especially of nurses who were heroes a year ago and now are villains. That's wrong, and this is the rational backlash to it.
Mo, what is the solution? Because it appears neither side is blinking on this.
Well, the solution is going to have to watch people die. And what we see here in California, to use as a parallel, we have LA first responders who are going to sue because they know that they can't strike. And in California, you cannot strike as a public employee if it has to do with anything that may impact the public health and safety of the populace. So this is a workaround. They're trying to an end around as far as trying to avoid the vaccine mandate. And let's not confuse resistance with righteousness. It is an unrighteous fight at this point. People are still dying. In Los Angeles specifically, the COVID numbers, hospitalizations are going up. And scientifically, we know that if you're unvaccinated, you are more likely to be hospitalized. You are more likely to die.
Right,
this is an unrighteous fight.
That is undeniable. I know, Tony, you want to get back in on this, but I want to jump in on one other topic before we let you go, and that's American Airlines canceling more than 2,000 flights over the weekend. Here's a clip from our friend Peter Greenberg today on Morning in America as to why.
What's going to happen a week from today? That's when foreign travelers invade America. That's when the doors are open for them to come in, and thousands of them will. right before the holiday season. So you have a perfect storm here. Labor issues, staffing issues, the vaccination issues, and of course, throw a little bit of weather in there, which happens in November. Good luck.
Tony, you go first on this. First Southwest, now American. What's going on?
Are mandates worth it is the question that needs to be asked by politicos and CEOs all across the country. Was it worth it? Did you get something out of it? The science is not on the side of mandates. The science is on the side of a rational conversation. And when people choose not to get vaccinated, the only people they affect, according to the science, are themselves.
Are you saying that this is a result of the mandates, Tony? This is why these flights are getting canceled?
It is an anti-American thought process. It is a values thought process. And as we have seen, it doesn't produce the result that you want.
Well,
so
the last I heard, American was 97% vaccinated, I thought.
If you have that number, if you say that's the number, I'll believe you. But if we're going to believe that all these delays are because of weather, well, I think you're going to have a harder time convincing people of that.
Mo, what does this mean for Thanksgiving?
It means that it's going to be business as usual. If you search the history of airlines and also cancellations, this is not unusual. It's a culmination of things. It's a confluence of things. I'm quite sure vaccines and mandates are part of it, but weather is a part of it. If you have an issue in the Dallas area, that's going to impact American Airlines as its hub disproportionately as opposed to other airlines. So there are other things to be considered. If there's someone on the ground, if there's a staffing issue, there are a number of people which are needed to get a plane in the air safely. So it's not just pilots, it's ground crew. It's any number of things which can come together.
Well, it's a mess for sure. And if you're flying on Thanksgiving, one of the busiest travel times of the year, good luck. Mo Kelly, Tony Katz, it's great to have you as always. Good to see you both.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Crime is becoming the #1 issue for voters in local elections. From Buffalo to Seattle, mayoral candidates are talking about law and order. I'll speak with our top cop, Sergeant, next. Meanwhile, Minnesota votes to replace its police department with the Department of Public Safety. We're live on the ground in Minneapolis with that. And the trial for Kyle Rittenhouse begins today. The judge playing Jeopardy with the jurors today and also saying last week that people shot shouldn't be referred to as victims. Is this a judge just for character, or is this a potential problem? We'll ask our legal expert, Randy Zelin. It's all ahead. Voters in Minneapolis facing a big decision tomorrow, whether to scrap the city's police department in favor of a new Department of Public Safety. Joining me now for more, live from Minneapolis, Kelsey Kernstein. Kernstein, sorry about that, Kelsey. This is where defund the police really kind of got started. So how would this look in Minneapolis if it passes?
Well, Joe, we really are at ground zero of defund the police. This is really in Minneapolis where that movement all really got started. 18 months ago, we saw the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. After that, we saw the eruption of protests right here in Minneapolis and then across the nation. And they were really calling for defunding the police and getting rid of the Minneapolis police officer, police department, that is. Now, voters, they will take the polls tomorrow, and they will decide on a measure whether to abolish the Minneapolis Police Department. And if passed, it would be replaced as the Department of Public Safety. This is essentially a comprehensive public health approach. What would happen if there is a mental health call, they will contact a mental health professional rather than an armed officer to respond to that call. Now, it could include licensed officers. A lot of it is not really spelled out yet, and that's what upsets a lot of opponents to the measure, saying, well, I don't exactly know what this includes. It's just not clear, Joe.
Kelsey, have you been able to hear anything on the ground as far as polling or otherwise what happens with these candidates? Because there are several of them running, and what the thought is on whether Jacob Frey gets reelected tomorrow.
Well, all I can tell you is right now, Joe, is that the crime is up. This is really a pivotal time, and that's really what it's all going to come down to. Crime is up by 30% here in Minneapolis from 2019 to 2020. Murders across the nation are up 30% from 2019 to 2020. That's the single highest jump in just 1 year alone since the 1960s, that is. And, really to keep these cities going and thriving, you have have to keep the people living in the cities. And it all comes down to really fighting crime and keeping safety here in Minneapolis, Joe.
Well, we'll see if it costs the current mayor his job tomorrow. Kelsey Kernstein, thank you very much for the live report tonight from Minneapolis. Joining me now for more on this, retired LAPD Sergeant Sheryl Dorsey. Sergeant, I'm wondering, I'm sure you're not as familiar certainly with Minneapolis as you are with LA, but just give me your gut feeling on this. Does this pass tomorrow?
Well, listen, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the cop mentality is the same all across these 18,000 police departments. And the problem that they're having there is not unique to Minneapolis. When police officers get butthurt, they lash out. Blue flu, it was a thing, right? Sure. Slow response. Police officers can make or break a chief, and every chief serves at the pleasure of a mayor. And so, listen, these folks who are hollering, defund the police department, be careful what you ask for.
What happens if it does pass, Sergeant? I mean, is it necessarily a bad thing that they might start from scratch there in Minneapolis?
Well, it just depends, because listen, when you defund a police department, when you break it down, when you replace it like they did over in St. Louis, right? Darren Wilson, he came from a defunct police department. I think it was called Jennings PD before he went over to Ferguson. And so there are plenty of misfit toys out there who have resigned under protest or who quit, retired a little early from one department, and they're going to move around like chess pieces. So you'll have somebody who will replace these people under a different name, wearing a different uniform with that same mentality. Until and unless you deal with the accountability issue, you're going to continue to have the same problem. And why they won't deal with accountability is beyond me. You would think it was a four-letter word.
Well, Representative Ilhan Omar recently said that police were not fulfilling their oath of office in Minneapolis. Here's a clip of this, and we'll get your comment after.
Minneapolis Police Department is the most dysfunctional police department in our state and probably in the country.
She's essentially their sergeant blaming police for the rise in crime.
Well, listen, stats can be manipulated, and you can move a type of crime from one category to another. Murders are up nationwide, 30%. Well, listen, so is mass shooting. Is anybody concerned about that? Are they willing to do something about gun control and background checks to deal with that? And when you talk about calling a clinician rather than a police officer, that's all great and good as long as you have the opportunity. But what about those traffic stops that police officers engage in, and you don't know that the person that you're dealing with is having a mental episode, and you've got to deal with it right now? You don't have time to get a clinician. You can't call a timeout, and you have a Derek Chauvin or someone else who's ill-suited. And that's why it's so important to get the right police officers on the department in the first place. And when somebody shows you that they don't have the temperament, then you need to get rid of them.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the mayoral races, Sergeant, going on around the country right now in a number of cities. And you mentioned defunding. There's Pew Research out tonight that shows 47% of Americans want to increase police funding. 15% want to decrease funding. This has become a big issue for a lot of cities that initially, as you said, wanted to defund. But now that we're seeing sort of the result of that, many of them are backing off. Do you think this turns tomorrow on Election Day, where people start to shift and put more money on their concerns about violent crime?
I think a lot of times mayors are just paying lip service to protesters and activists and others. And again, be careful what you ask for, because listen, every police chief serves at the pleasure of one of those mayors, and they buckled to the pressure of protesters last year. There is a contingency of people out there who are hoping that they would defund the police, who want fewer officers on the street so that they can victimize those of us who may be out there and unable to protect ourselves. And so it doesn't make sense to me to want to defund the police. Here on LAPD, talking about defunding meant police stations closing early, meant specialized units shutting down. And so you can't have a city of any size without an adequate police force to patrol it.
All right, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because it is an issue now, crime, and this election tomorrow in cities from Seattle all the way to Atlanta and beyond. Retired LAPD Sergeant Sheryl Dorsey, it's always great to have you. And you can check out the Sergeant's book, The Confidence Chronicles, the greatest story never told. Sergeant, great to have you. Take care.
Thank you.
A case that has fallen by the wayside now coming back to the national stage. Kyle Rittenhouse, a young man accused of shooting 3 men, 2 of whom died in Kenosha, Wisconsin last summer. He will stand trial this week. The incident occurred during protests over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Rittenhouse was 17 at the time, was in an area with a semi-automatic rifle when he was chased by demonstrators, shot 3 of them. Rittenhouse expected to argue this was self-defense. Joining us now, our friend, criminal defense attorney Randy Zelin. Randy, first of all, the judge doesn't want the lawyers to call the people who got shot victims. He suggested maybe we call them rioters or looters. And I guess my first thought was you could make the case then that any reference might be prejudicial, right? I mean, rioters or looters makes it sound like they were doing something illegal.
The first part of the judge's ruling I agreed with, because there is a connotation that comes along with using the term victim. When you refer to someone as a victim, that does assume, it does suggest that they were the victim of wrongdoing, which does trespass into the presumption of innocence. But what confounds me, that if the judge is looking to play things down the middle and not permit these complaining witnesses to be called victims, why then would you go 180 degrees the other way and say, well, it's okay to call them arsonists or looters or rioters? That makes absolutely no sense to me. And of course, if I'm a prosecutor, I'm going to say, hey, judge, you know, if you're going to try my case for me, please try not to lose it, certainly where I can't appeal an acquittal and I can't ask for a mistrial. So the judge, he got it right, and then all of a sudden just went completely the other way. Just refer to them all by name, and then this way you avoid any stigma.
Randy, what do you think of this? The judge also did this today. I'm not sure if you saw this. We'll play it for you and see what you think after.
Not to be confused, for 400 on the menu, scallops are shellfish, and these are immature or green onions. Who said scallions? Well, they all said it now, you know? Yeah. And, of course, it's the correct answer.
I'm not quite sure what the context is here, but they're playing Jeopardy in court today, Randy. What do you make of that?
Look, when I first heard about it, I thought it was a bit on the outrageous side, given the seriousness of what's happening here. We have 2 people dead, another person seriously injured, a city torn apart. Right. And here is the judge playing Jeopardy. But then I took a breath and I thought about it, and I realized what the judge is doing is exactly that. He is diffusing a very tense situation. You may have a number of jurors who went in with the preconceived notion that I'm going to get off this jury no matter what. The judge is now disarming them, putting them at ease, making them feel as if this is not such a bad place to be. Judge Arthur Spatt once said, short of serving one's country in the military, jury service is the greatest service that we do as citizens. It is a very, very serious duty. So I do think that we ought to give the judge a little bit of credit, because we do ask jurors to come into a courtroom with nothing more than their common sense and everyday life experiences. So the judge was trying to put everyone at ease.
Okay, hey, Randy, I'm up against the clock here. I need a quick answer. He's going to claim self-defense. In the end, do you think he's guilty or not guilty?
I think he's got a very serious problem with self-defense. He's got a provocation issue. Remember, he went there. They didn't come to him. You have it happen 3 times, one with a plastic bag. That's not reasonable apprehension of danger when someone throws a plastic bag at you.
Yeah, we will get you back and talk more about this case as it continues to unfold. Randy Zelin, always good to have you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Day one, and it is a down payment. It's a down payment to close that gap and give our parents choice. But friends, we know it all starts with curriculum. It all does. And so let me be very, very clear. We will teach accelerated math in Virginia schools. We will award advanced diplomas. We will teach all history, the good and the bad. The good and the bad.
A live look in at a late campaign rally for Republican Glenn Youngkin, a day ahead of the big gubernatorial race in Virginia tomorrow, talking about what we know now is a very important issue in that race, that, of course, being education. We'll continue to cover this gubernatorial race through Election Day right here on NewsNation. Much more coming up at the top of the hour with Leland Vittert. Meantime, ships continue to back up off the coast of L.A. as supply chain issues remain. NewsNation's Nancy Liu live for us tonight with the latest on the supply chain issues. Hi, Nancy.
Hi there, Joe. Today we've got another near record number of ships, 154, either here at port or waiting offshore. One ship out there actually arrived over a month and a half ago on September 12th. Tracking all of that traffic is the Maritime Exchange of Southern California, which allowed us in this morning for a look at how so many ships are managed and maneuvered. The circles on the radar screen are like parking spots, but there aren't nearly enough. Today alone, about 50 ships are at port, but more than 100 more are waiting offshore up to 40 miles out. We listened in as the crew of the Ophelia was finally called into an open anchorage. Those at the control center have grown accustomed to the new normal, which is way above what was normal pre-COVID.
There's 2.5 times as many vessels as should be here. So it's causing the controllers to sit more on the edge of their seats. It's causing my maritime information specialists, instead of tracking roughly 60 ships a day, which is the number per COVID, today they have 154.
Now, as for the Ophelia, it finally got to an anchor today after arriving on October 21st. So under a month is actually a far shorter wait than for many other ships out there. Joe?
All right. Nancy Liu, thank you for the update live in L.A. tonight. Tonight's American Snapshot now, a team of Alabama lifeguards going the extra mile to ensure a grandmother had a vacation to remember. Last month, 95-year-old Dottie Schneider and her daughter Kimberly vacationed at Orange Beach, Alabama. One problem, Dottie uses a wheelchair and couldn't get to the beach on her own. Well, to the rescue, a group of lifeguards from the Orange Beach Safety Division. They carried Dottie to the beachfront every day, carried her for a week. The lifeguards gave Dottie their phone number and told her to call them every morning when she was ready to go to the beach, and that's just what she did. Tonight's American Snapshot, the new way to get around a beach while on vacation. They apparently stocked the fridge for the lifeguards too, and with beer. Leland's next. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.